I saw them fall into the dark water, one by one, hands tied, eyes blindfolded, screams that lasted only a few seconds before the ocean swallowed them whole. I was the captain of that boat. My name is Venancio Langlois. For 40 years I lived by one simple rule. I don't ask questions. Whoever pays gives the orders. Whoever gives the orders survives. That night, the man giving orders was Abdi Rashid. I will never forget his face. A deep scar split his skin from his temple down to his jaw, like someone tried to erase half of who he was, and failed. He held his rifle with calm hands. No hurry, no doubt. Throw the next one. And when Pastor Ismail Hassan was shoved toward the edge, I saw something that haunted me for years. It wasn't fear, it was peace. And in the moment his body disappeared into the black water, I understood something. Someone was going to die that night. But maybe it wouldn't be who I thought. I was born near the sea. My mother used to say I had salt in my lungs before my first cry. Her name was Helena Langlois, a Christian, the kind who prays on her knees on cold floors when no one is watching. When I was a boy, she would hold my hand and whisper, "Son, one day the sea will bring you back to God." I laughed. I told her, God doesn't sail. I grew up believing the only ruler over the waters was money. I learned early that morals don't pay for fuel, conscience doesn't pay the crew, and faith doesn't fill a tank. For decades, I carried whatever people loaded onto my deck, weapons, illegal cargo, and people no one wanted seen. I didn't ask questions, because questions create responsibility, and responsibility creates guilt. And in places where fear runs the streets, guilt is a burden most men don't survive. In Somalia, many battles aren't fought in courtrooms. They're fought in public, where intimidation is loud and mercy is rare. And for years, fear controlled everything. Local criminals demanded what people called the fear tax. You pay or you disappear. You obey or you become an example. And it worked, until a small Christian community decided to live differently. They were called the Light of the Way community. Their leader was Pastor Ismail Hassan, a thin man with steady eyes and a voice too calm for a place like that. Beside him stood Amina Wasame and an elderly believer named Yusuf Ali. They didn't insult anyone. They didn't attack people with hate. They did something more dangerous. They organized hope. They made food and water distribution fair. They created a small community fund for threatened families. They protected young men from being recruited into violence. They taught reading at night under weak lamps, and they spoke about Jesus, not as a weapon, but as a lifeline. In a land ruled by fear, that kind of hope is seen as rebellion, and something unusual started happening. The more threats came, the more the community grew, the more they were pressured, the more they preached. It was as if persecution didn't stop the message. It spread it. And that's when Abdi Rashid decided to step in personally. A man who rules by terror can tolerate many things, but he cannot tolerate people who stop being afraid. First came the messages, notes left on doors, names scratched on walls, then silent stalking in the streets, and then the list. 15 names, 15 Christians, a final warning written in red. The sea will be the witness. They didn't know it yet, but I was already part of their story. The confrontation didn't start with bullets. It started with a question. Late one afternoon, Abdi Rashid walked across the main square in Kismayo. Under the sun, his scar looked darker, almost angry. He moved slowly, without obvious bodyguards, because real power doesn't need to run. Pastor Ismail was organizing sacks of rice, 2 lines, children first, elderly next, no pushing, no favoritism. Abdi stopped in front of him. Silence. The kind of silence that makes even the wind hold its breath. "Are you not afraid of death?" Abdi asked. He didn't shout. He sounded almost curious. Ismail lifted his eyes. No arrogance, no challenge, just steady truth. I'm afraid of one thing, Abdi. A pause. I'm afraid of living my whole life defending a lie. The square froze. Abdi tilted his head slightly. And dying? He asked. Ismail answered, for someone who lives for the gospel, the greatest fear isn't dying for the truth. The greatest fear is dying while doing evil and calling it courage. No applause, no cheering, but something shifted in the air. People in the line started to cry quietly, because when truth is spoken in a territory of fear, the heart recognizes it. Abdi stepped closer. You're teaching people to disobey, he said. No, Ismail replied. I'm teaching people not to kneel to fear. That wasn't just faith. That was defiance. And defiance in a place like that always demands a response. Abdi gathered his men. Farah, the silent one. Eyes always low, hands always ready. Bilal Noor, restless, eager to prove he was ruthless enough. Who's causing this rebellion? Abdi asked. Ismail, Farah answered. And how many follow him? Many. Abdi exhaled slowly. The scar pulled the corner of his face. Then we will teach fear again. The list began circulating that night. 15 names, not only leaders, some families, some young believers. The message didn't say arrest, it said example. Because when fear wants to win, it doesn't debate. It disappears people. I didn't know all of this yet, but 3 days later a man with cold eyes boarded my boat and placed a heavy envelope on the cabin table. Discreet transport, he said. I didn't ask. I never asked. But that week, Somalia was about to show me something I had never seen in all my years at sea. The ambush didn't start with gunfire. It started with silence. Before sunrise, the trucks came. No sirens, no bright lights, no urgency. The first house was Pastor Ismail's. The door wasn't carefully opened. It was kicked in like a warning. Amina grabbed her children, Ibrahim and Safia, before she even understood what was happening. Masked men rushed in, ropes, feet tied, hands pulled behind backs. No warrants, no explanations, only one sentence repeated like a verdict. You went too far. Across the city, Yusuf Ali was dragged out of his home. He didn't resist. He only said, "Do not answer with hatred." That line irritated them more than any scream. 15 people were taken that night, some in pajamas, some barefoot. The city woke to the sound of engines leaving, and to the silence that comes after fear wins. 3 hours later, a man climbed onto my boat. Heavy envelope, advance payment. We're transporting cargo to international waters. What kind of cargo? I asked. He looked at me like he was measuring danger. Special. I should have pressed him. But money speaks loudly when your conscience has learned to stay quiet. We drove the trucks to a secondary pier. That's when I saw it. Not crates. People, tied, blindfolded, breathing too fast. My stomach turned, but I had already been paid. And in my world, returning money can cost more than accepting guilt. When they removed Pastor Ismail's blindfold, he blinked against the cold pier lights. He looked around, then he looked at me, and for a second I felt like he wasn't seeing a captain, he was seeing a man. You don't have to do this, he said. Not accusing, not begging, just stating truth. I answered automatically. I only drive the boat. He tilted his head slightly. No one only drives when lives are on the deck. That sentence kept pounding in my head. Ibrahim cried quietly. Safia trembled. Yusuf murmured a psalm I didn't recognize, and Abdi Rashid boarded last. Under the pier's harsh light, his scar looked deeper, like it was carved into him. He walked up to Ismail. You touched the system, Abdi said. You weakened my authority. You taught people not to obey fear. Ismail answered, I taught them not to be afraid. Abdi smirked. Fear is necessary, not when it's used to enslave, Ismail said. The deck grew heavy. I started the engines. The diesel roar swallowed most voices. But it didn't swallow the sentence echoing in my mind. No one only drives when lives are on the deck. As the boat pulled away, the city shrank behind us, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not fear, a crack, like something inside me was starting to break. So let me ask you, if you were in my place, armed men on deck, money already in your pocket, your own life on the line, would you have the courage to say no? Comment, I would or I don't know, and tell me what country you're watching from, because the next decision I made changed everything. The port vanished behind us like it never existed. When land disappears, your world becomes small. Only sea, only engine, only choice. Abdi stood most of the trip with his arms crossed, watching. His scar looked like a second mouth, always open, always reminding everyone this was personal. Farah guarded the prisoners. Bilal paced like a dog waiting to be unleashed. The Christians sat on the deck, tied. That disturbed the armed men more than shouting ever would. Yusuf prayed softly, not loud enough to challenge, but loud enough not to hide. Ibrahim closed his eyes, repeating words like he had memorized them. Safia leaned on her mother's shoulder. Amina whispered, "He is with us, even here." I pretended not to hear, but I heard everything. Open sea has a silence that magnifies every breath. Every word grows heavier. After 2 hours, Abdi approached the cabin. Captain, what's the depth here?" I checked the sonar. 300 meters. He nodded. Perfect. I knew what that meant. No fishermen, no traffic, no witnesses. He turned to his men. Prepare. That word is too small for what it carries. I shut down the main engine. The silence that followed was brutal. Without the diesel roar, everything became raw. Ropes tightening, metal clicking, water tapping the hull. Ismail lifted his eyes to the starless sky. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death," he began. Bilal shoved his shoulder. "Shut up," Ismail continued. "I will fear no evil." Farah slapped the back of his head, but Ismail didn't stop. And that's when something truly broke inside me. I had transported criminals. I had seen violence. But this was different. They weren't bargaining. They weren't pleading. They were ready. And that made no sense to me. Abdi walked toward the family. He looked at Ibrahim, then at Safia. "Children first," he said. Amina stood with difficulty. No. It wasn't a scream. It was a plea pulled from the deepest place of a mother's soul. Abdi tilted his head. "You want them to grow up rebellious like you." Yusuf raised his voice. "They are not rebels. They are free." That word cut through the air. Free. My hands tightened on the wheel. My palms were sweating. My mother used to say, "Freedom without God becomes pride." I always ignored her. But there, freedom looked like something else. When Bilal grabbed Ibrahim by the arm, something snapped in me. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't rehearsed bravery. It was instinct. "No," I said quietly. But I said it. Every head turned toward me. Abdi walked slowly to the cabin. "What did you say, Captain?" My throat was dry. I said, "No." He smiled. The scar pulled his face. "You only drive the boat." "Not today." Silence. The kind of silence that comes before a final decision. He raised his rifle, aiming at me. "Then you go down with them." My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my neck. 40 years saying I don't ask questions. 40 years surviving. And now I was about to die for something I didn't even fully understand. My mother used to say, "One day you will choose who your Lord is." I never answered. Until that night, "I will not let you throw the children." There was no heroism. There was trembling. But there was a decision, and then the sea did something I had never seen. No wind, no wave, just response. The hull cracked, the boat vibrated, no storm, no warning, like something had touched it from below. Abdi lost balance for a second. Farah grabbed the railing. Bilal stared at the water. And I realized whatever was about to happen was no longer under human control. The first impact came from below, hard, dry, like something solid hit the hull, not a wave. The sea was too still, too still. The boat tilted slightly. Bilal stumbled. "What was that?" someone shouted. No one answered because no one knew. The second impact was stronger. The entire deck shook, wood groaned, the sonar began glitching. I ran to the panel. On the screen, multiple signals appeared, moving, not in straight lines, in circles, surrounding us. "What's under us?" Farah asked. I didn't answer, because I had no answer that made sense. Abdi pointed his rifle at the water. "Keep going," he shouted. "Finish it!" Bilal dragged the first prisoner to the edge, pushed. A dull splash, water closing over him. Silence, no long scream, no plea, only the sea. Then it happened. No explosion, no movie light from the sky. The opposite. The sea began to move against logic. No wind, yet the surface rippled like something massive was rising. From below, upward. The hull lifted slightly. I felt it, didn't see it. Felt it, like a wave passing under a small boat. But there was no wave. A third impact came, stronger, wood split near the stern. Safia began to cry. Ibrahim clung to his mother. Yusuf closed his eyes. Ismail stood, still tied. "Lord," he whispered. Abdi fired into the water. One sharp shot, then another. Bullets cut the surface, but the sea didn't react like water. It reacted like something living that had been provoked. The vibration grew. Now it wasn't only the hull, it was the air, a pressure. The kind of pressure before a storm. But there were no clouds, no thunder, only us and something below. Farah screamed, "They're coming back!" I looked and I saw, not theatrical bodies, not ghosts, something simpler and impossible to ignore. The ropes that had tied two of them began floating up, intact, like they were released below the surface. No knife, no visible cut. Water around the boat began to swirl, not a downward vortex, a current that held. The boat tilted more. Abdi yelled, "Throw them all, now!" Bilal tried to drag Amina, but slipped as the deck shifted. Farah dropped to his knees. I grabbed the wheel, but I wasn't steering anymore. The sea was. A violent crack echoed beneath us, and the boat rose slightly. Again, not meters. Just enough for everyone to feel something huge pass under the hull. Abdi fell backward. His rifle slid away. Ismail stood there tied, as if the deck had paused for him. And I understood. This wasn't rage. It was interruption. Fear had met something that does not negotiate. Water began pouring in fast. Farah tried to run, slipped, fell. Bilal screamed nonsense. Abdi tried to stand. He stared at the sea, and for the first time, I saw fear on the face of the man with the scar. "This isn't possible," he whispered. I thought the same, but it was there. Possible or not, real. The structure gave way. The boat tilted hard. When water reached my knees, I understood. The sea was obeying no one there, except the one who made it. The boat flipped, not slowly, not dramatic, sudden, cold, immediate, water everywhere, darkness, pressure, silence under the surface. I tried to swim, but I didn't know where up was. Everything was the same. That's when I stopped fighting, not because I was brave, because I was done. And when I stopped, someone held me. The water was cold, but the cold wasn't what crushed me. It was the lack of direction. I didn't know where up was, where down was. I fought on instinct, arms flailing into nothing, lungs burning. Then I stopped, not by courage, by exhaustion. And when I stopped, I felt a hand, firm, holding my arm, not yanking, not violent, sustaining. I didn't see who it was. I only felt I was being guided upward. When I broke the surface, air tore into my lungs. I coughed, spit seawater, looked around. I expected chaos, bodies, screams. None of it. The sea was calm, too calm. Broken pieces of wood floated nearby. A torn piece of deck, nothing else. Then I saw Ibrahim rise beside me, breathing. Amina was behind him, holding Safia, both conscious. No ropes, no signs of drowning. Ismail was several meters ahead, upright, not on wood, on water, not walking, but sustained, as if the sea had decided he would not sink. I blinked again and again. Not blurred vision, not a hallucination. They were alive. All 15 spread out in a circle, breathing, eyes open, no panic, as if they had passed through something and returned. I searched for Abdi, for Farah, for Bilal. Nothing, only silence, and the sea still. Minutes later, we saw a Coast Guard boat in the distance. Currents were pushing us towards shore. No effort, no paddling, no struggle. As if the ocean itself had decided our destination. They pulled us out, one by one. When my feet touched sand, I trembled, not from cold, from understanding. Hours later, we heard the news. Abdi Rashid and his men had washed up kilometers north, alive, but shattered, confused, speaking incoherently. Abdi repeated one line over and over. The sea didn't obey me. He was arrested. Farah confessed old crimes. Bilal gave names, routes, operations. The system began collapsing, not by armed revolt, by exposure. I was interrogated. I told the truth. I expected prison. I expected charges, but Amina spoke on my behalf. He tried to stop it, and Ismail added, he chose. I never thought of it like that. I always said I only drove. But that night, I chose, and it changed everything. I had been complicit for years. I had carried fear. I had enabled violence, but something was ripped out of me that night. My mother used to say, God doesn't force a return. He waits for a decision. That night I decided, and when I decided, I was sustained. Not by strength, not by skill, but by mercy. I left the illegal work, sold what I had, used the money to help threatened families, and for the first time in my life, I sailed without hiding cargo, without hiding guilt. But there was something I still needed to understand. Because surviving is not the same as being transformed. And that's when it hit me. The miracle didn't start when the boat sank. It started when I said no. I could end this story by saying I survived, that the criminals were arrested, that the community grew. But that wouldn't be the real point. Because the greatest miracle that night wasn't the boat sinking. It was my pride sinking. For 40 years I said, I only drive. Maybe you say something similar. I only work here. I only follow orders. I'm just doing what everyone does. I'm just trying to survive. But let me tell you what I learned too late. No one is just anything when lives are involved. No one is just participating when evil is happening. Either you stand or you allow. And allowing is also choosing. I grew up hearing my mother read the Bible. I ignored it. I thought faith was for weak people, until the night I became weak enough to stop fighting. And when I stopped, someone held me. Jesus said in Matthew 14:27, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." He didn't say that from the shore, he said it on the water. Peter began to sink when he looked at the wind. I began sinking long before that night, because I spent my whole life looking only at myself. Maybe your sea today isn't physical. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's a hidden sin no one knows. Maybe it's money you earn by closing your eyes to what you know is wrong. Maybe it's fear of losing your position, your reputation, your friends. You think you're surviving, but you're sinking slowly. And in His mercy, God sometimes allows the boat to flip, not to destroy you, but to reveal you. My boat of security flipped. My boat of neutrality flipped. My boat of excuses flipped. And when it flipped, I discovered the bottom was not the end. It was the beginning. Let me speak to you directly. If God wanted to condemn you, He would not be reaching you right now. You wouldn't have clicked this video by accident. You wouldn't have stayed this long. You wouldn't feel that heaviness in your chest. That heaviness is not destructive shame. It's an invitation. Isaiah 43:2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and the rivers will not sweep over you." He doesn't promise there will be no water. He promises His presence inside it. The miracle is not living without storms. The miracle is not being swallowed by them. I was complicit. I carried fear. I ignored my mother's voice. I rejected God for decades, and still, He held me not because I deserved it, but because He is rich in mercy. Maybe you're waiting to feel worthy before coming back. You never will. I wasn't worthy. I was tired. And tired is enough to start. God doesn't need you strong. He needs you honest. Honest enough to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. Honest enough to admit, I've been allowing things I know are wrong. Honest enough to let go of the wheel you never truly controlled. I thought I was the captain, but I was never the owner of the sea. You think you control your life, but there are storms that don't obey you, and there is mercy that refuses to give up on you. If your boat has flipped today, maybe it's not the end. Maybe God is saying, now I can teach you to walk. I want to pray with you, not a pretty prayer, a real one. If this spoke to you, close your eyes for a moment and say, God, I've been living on autopilot. I've been allowing things I know are not right. I've been calling fear survival. I don't want to only drive anymore. I want to obey. If my boat needs to flip so I can wake up, then sustain me in the waters. Forgive my indifference. Forgive my choices. And teach me to live without negotiating my conscience. In Jesus' name, Amen. If you prayed that sincerely, the miracle has already begun. Maybe no one sees it. Maybe there's no light in the sky. But something moved inside you, and that is stronger than any storm. If this story touched you, don't stay silent. Write in the comments, I choose not to kneel to fear. And tell me what country you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with someone who feels like they're drowning and needs to know there's still a hand extended. And if you want to strengthen your prayer life, I left an ebook that has helped many people in difficult seasons. The link is in the description. In the next video, in China, 5 elderly Christians were locked up without food until death, and God used a child. Because when the world thinks it won, God is still writing the final line. The sea can be deep, but grace is deeper. And if He reached me, He can reach you.